All right, everybody, we are here with the one, the only Duke of Permaculture, Paul Wheaton, on a Wednesday Live with John Willis and Nicole Sauce. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for
How do you
having
feel about
me.
that? You're here.
Yes, from Montana. I'm a long ways away.
Yeah.
I'll yell really loud so you can hear me.
Okay, that's good. Does it echo much in Montana when you do that, or does it just go away?
I don't think I've heard much of an echo ever in Montana. It's rare. Do you have a lot of echo in Tennessee?
No,
We do.
We have trees everywhere.
See, in the holler that I live in, we do. If you talk up the holler, you can hear down the holler. I think that's why we call it a holler, because I know all my neighbors' business. But John lives in the flatter area. Okay, so guys in the live chat, if you have questions, just put the first couple words in all caps. We've got the Duke for about an hour. He's super busy, but Paul came on today to talk to us about crowdfunding, Kickstarters, and those sorts of things. So let's start with this, Paul. If somebody wants to raise money with a Kickstarter, what 2 or 3 things are important to have in place before they ever launch? Like, how does that work, and what's really important about having that Kickstarter?
I think the number one thing is time. I get contacted by people who are like, hey, can you help me? Can you tell people about my Kickstarter? And we do that. Permies.com. So many websites are all about like, take your commercial shit away from here. And Permies.com, we're very good, I believe, at helping homesteaders and entrepreneurs get a foothold, get started, get things off the ground. And so we've helped people with a lot of their wackadoodle Kickstarters. So I've looked at a lot of Kickstarters, and it's like, when you put the time in, it really shows. And I think that if you get a bunch of people to look at your Kickstarter, it makes a big difference. I see people asking for way too much money. Like, they're going to do a thing that sounds like something that might cost $8,000, but they want $45,000 because they're paying themselves and they're gonna buy a new car and all these other things. And it's kind of like, that's not what Kickstarter's for. Kickstarter's for helping you, like you put a bunch of skin in the game. You've been working on this project for 6 months, but you hit a financial barrier. And man, if you just had another $8,000, you could get past that barrier and move on. And everybody gets a product. So that's a Kickstarter, not I'm lazy and I don't like doing stuff. I hope I could get paid and not have to work. Kickstarter people are such stupid suckers. I hope that they'll give me money and then I won't have to work anymore. It's like that kind of stuff doesn't fly. It's got to be something like you've already got a lot of skin in the game. I think that's a super critical. And part of it is the Kickstarter itself needs to be well set up and well thought out. I think another thing is like there's a book out there called Launch, and it kind of helps to say the way that you tell people about stuff today is completely different than the way that we did it 10, 15 years ago. And so the psychology of people today is radically different. And the cool thing is that in the book, the example they give is a game called Wildcraft, which I've played, and I haven't played that many board games, but it's kind of a cool little permy game. But that's the sample that they use in the book Launch. And so pretty much it says develop a mailing list and then interact with the people on your mailing list. So if there's people that are participating in this right now and they're on Permies, they've probably heard about this Kickstarter at least 3 times before the Kickstarter launched. And so I think that's part of it. If you tell people about a Kickstarter one time, hardly anybody will back it. You end up, by the time the whole thing is done, you'll have sent out 20 emails about the Kickstarter. Logic says that's ridiculous. You never need to send out more than one. They're either in or they're out, and you don't have to ever mention it again. And then the reality is that a lot of people don't really want to pay any attention to it until they've heard about it 7 or 8 times.
You have to
All right,
make it a household name. It's like, remember when you used to get an album or a CD from an artist you really like, but you didn't like all the tracks. But after you've heard it 4 or 5 times, all of a sudden you like all the tracks. It just has to get in their head.
It's human psychology. And so I don't know how many times I've gotten one email from somebody saying you're sending too many emails. This was probably the 7th email you sent about this. And then I reply and I say, okay, well, now you're getting 8 because you're getting a reply from me. But I got to tell you, you're the only complaint we've had for this entire campaign. And on just this last email, the one you're complaining, we just got 200 more people back in the Kickstarter. So they kind of voted with their dollar that this amount is okay. Another great story is that we had these 2 people come to an event. And what we did was that we said, anybody who backed the Kickstarter for $100 or more, that particular Kickstarter years ago, would get a free ticket to an event here in the summer. So these 2 people were winners. Both of them backed the Kickstarter in the last hour after getting like a couple of dozen emails. They were like, oh, it's almost over. I've been putting this off. I'll look now. They both ended up winning a ticket to our summer events. And then they both came and they both stuck around for the boot camp afterwards. And it turned out the reason why they stuck around is that each of them was keen on the other. And then after 6 months, they finally got past all their shyness. And after 2 years, they got married. And she inherited a 500-acre cattle farm in Texas. Now they're both down there doing that. So it's kind of like, so there's my little story. The moral of the story is they didn't back on the first email or the 12th. They waited until they're about 24. Then they finally did it. And that's very common. In fact, the first, or I should say, the last couple of days of the Kickstarter, oftentimes we get more people backing during the last few days than all the rest of the Kickstarter combined.
We tell those complainers that's a you problem. The one that has the problem.
I think there's truth to that, but I also think there's truth to what they're saying. Like, this seems like too many. And the thing that they're not aware of is like, and yet this is how you do it in 2022. There's
an unsubscribe button.
Yeah. Ooh, Jack taught me that when I first set up my email, and I started getting people telling me what to say or what to think or what not to say or whatever. You know, mostly what not to say. Jack
that works well with you, right, Paul? People telling you what not to say.
There's a few of those. They don't appreciate the full beauty of the English language for some reason.
We take those guys, and I actually post their emails. And those posts that I make will get 300 to 500 comments, and it just rallies those troops out. And anytime we're doing anything that they take issue with a product or the cost of an item, our sales always spike, like literally tenfold when I post one of those emails, because those guys, our followers and our people online, they can't communicate directly to that guy, but they'll post an order number up because they know that guy's seeing it. I usually send the link to those people also. So they see the thing they had an issue with, 100 people just bought that at the price they were taking issue with. And it works. Psychologically, it works.
I think that there's a lot in our community, and I'm including you guys in our community. I'm in your community, you're in my community. Yeah. I think that because like Joel Salatin, and so Nicole, you can verify this. When Joel arrived at the Texas event, we were besties, but Joel confided in me something there that I thought was amazing, because about a year ago, he had some sort of cancel culture thing come to him.
Oh, yeah, he did. It was terrible.
Yeah. And now Permies.com, we don't have anything more to do with Mother Earth news. We not that we did a lot before, but now we do zero.
Right.
But the funny thing is that as much as, and it was one guy, and I looked at the like the thing that was going down. And it's like, well, wait, what are you? I don't even understand what you're angry about, one guy. And it's like, it seems like the one guy just decided to be angry, and that was it. And then Mother Earth News did cancel on Joel.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is, and this is what Joel told me at that Texas event. He said, it's like everything went awesome after that. Everything, kind of like what you just said. It's like you post some negative gobbledygook, and then our community comes out and is like, because basically the gobbledygook is like, you are not allowed to think the thoughts that you're thinking. I command you to think the thoughts I command you to think. I mean, I don't subscribe to my own thoughts that I'm commanding you to think, but I command you to think those thoughts. And if you don't think the thoughts I tell you to think, you'll get my wrath. And so
it's authenticity.
Our community says, that's not cool. That is not cool. You get to think your own crazy. You don't have to think that guy's crazy. You get to think your own crazy. And so our community is very supportive of think your own crazy. Don't think the other crazy that people tell you to think.
It's authenticity. As long as you are authentic, then the people who align with you know exactly what you are. And you can't be destroyed if you are authentic. They just can't do any. I have plenty of people that don't like things I say, but the things I say, if you just found me, I have said the exact same things for the entirety of social media. So join or don't join. The people, if you do good, the correct people will show up.
I mean, it's like there's got to be 10 million websites out on the internet. And so why are you hanging out on this one getting all pissy?
Right.
It's like, don't you want to go find the one that's like your home, your place?
Imagine how people's lives would be if they only interacted with things they liked and spent no time on things they don't like. Imagine the energy that you would have.
Yeah.
So,
that would be scary. Scary positive.
So Nicole, I have a Kickstarter running right now. We
okay. So tell us about that, because I part of why I wanted you this week is you launched a really cool Kickstarter, and anybody who's ever thought about crowdfunding, you should watch how Paul Wheaton does this. You need to get on his email list, starting with the email that launches before it launches. I got at least 2 emails yesterday about it before it launched, and see how he does that, because he's the master of getting interest, explaining the project. It's a really cool project. Tell us all about that, Paul.
Well, I would have to say I do pretty good for our community. And I mean, then there are people in our community, like I've seen Richard Perkins bring in $500,000.
Oh, yeah.
I've never come close to that. So I wouldn't say I am the master. I am a doofus.
A master.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Dude who does pretty good.
Yeah, I do pretty good. And I don't know. I mean, I love doing the Kickstarter because when you're all done, it feels like 2,000 people came and shoved a 20 in your pocket and gave you a pat on the back. And it's kind of like, I don't know. It is a really, really good feeling. I want everybody to do that. It's great. The next thing is that I am not doing this by myself. For all the stuff that I do, I've got about 100 people who help me. And so when you see this great production in front of you, it's not just me. If it was just me, it would look pretty weak. I mean, have you seen the animations that I make? Like, I've done animation on YouTube, but it's like a second grader made it. So really, it's my community. It's my peeps. We're making it together. We've been working on it for 2 months. And of course, we had the forethought to actually take the raw video back in January. And then it's taken a while until somebody was like, I want to turn this into a Kickstarter. I'm going to edit the video. And they did their legwork. And And so all these things come together and all these different people help out and pull it off.
Okay, so let's back up. You're doing a quick Kickstarter for what?
We recorded a woman teaching basically a modified Master Gardener class. Because if you take a Master Gardener class, it's taught by your county extension office, which is an extension of your state ag school, which is an extension of Chem Ag.
Yep.
So when
it's all
you
about how to keep your grass green and weed free.
With chemicals that are sold
right.
by the chemical company. All right. So
correct. This is why I didn't take that class.
And so, but at the same time, so here's our instructor, Helen Atta. She taught in 1996. I was bonkers about gardening in 1996. I was obsessed. Clearly the next step was to take the Master Gardener course. And I want to say, this is how so much of permaculture is. I had read over 100 gardening books when I walked into my Master Gardener class. I felt like I was going to be showing these people a thing or two. So I walked in there thinking I knew 90% of what there was to know about gardening. And I'm just there to kind of touch up a little bit, you know? And I learned that I was the dumbest person there, the most ignorant person there. Everybody there knew far more than me, knew 10 times more than me. All the other students, I had to struggle to try to keep up. It was challenging. And I passed. They had a test at the end, and I passed by the skin on my teeth. It was brutal. And I signed up for the advanced course the following year, and I did fine then. But it was gut-wrenching how challenging it was. Then, as the decades passed, I would run into other Master Gardeners from other states and other counties and things like that and visit with them about, wasn't that great? And then I came to learn that the Master Gardener course I went through was about like 10 times more intense than what they went through. It's the instructor. It's this particular instructor. Now, even more, like, so years and years pass, and then I become bonkers about permaculture, and then I tell Helen, the instructor, that I'm learning about permaculture. I'm so excited, and it's, you know, this direction I'm going in now and stuff like that. And she says, "Oh, you know what? I interned with Masanobu Fukuoka." As if, you know, didn't everybody? So Fukuoka, of course, is one of the permaculture superstars of years gone by. I mean, the stuff that he developed was phenomenal. And she has for 40 years, because I know the whole time that she was teaching Master Gardener courses for 17 years, that wasn't a full-time gig. She had a market garden of her own, and she was the premier market gardener at the Saturday markets in Missoula, which is saying something, because the Saturday markets in Missoula are glorious. So a lot of competition, but her stuff was always the biggest, the most brightly colored, the best. And so, and all her stuff is organic and way beyond organic. Not only that, but she would write a couple of white papers every year. She's very tied into science. And so she's proving her systems, and she's doing, and a lot of it's Fukuoka style, a lot of integrated crops. And a lot of her work is with entomology. So she's doing a lot with insects as well as different kinds of fungus problems and things of that nature. It is amazing. So I mean, I could easily fill 100 hours just talking about Helen, but I also know that after she left Missoula, she went and ran a 2,000 acre organic farm. And she has since managed two different properties where they would have not only a market garden, but something resembling an orchard, more like a food forest. And she's done one for several years in California, and one for several years in Eastern Oregon. And so massive experience. And so then I came to her and I said, okay, here's what I want to do. I want you to teach the Master Gardener course, but without all the chemical shit, because that was one of the reasons why she left. The leash that was put on her to teach the Master Gardener course became intolerable. And the rules about all the chem ag stuff that you have to teach just got bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And a lot of it really offended her. And so she got away from that. And I said, I want you to resume teaching the Master Gardener course, but what we'll do is we'll call it the Garden Master course. And in it, it's all food production. None of this flowers and stuff like that. None of this ornamentals. None of that. All food production. All for people with a medium-sized garden all the way through having 2,000 acres. And all of it being, she's got a thing where she presents a lot at a place called Eco Farm. And so she calls it, a lot of her stuff now, she calls it, ecologically minded stuff. And so, but it's all beyond organic. And basically she has been expanding on the work of Fukuoka ever since she interned for Fukuoka over 40 years ago. And so these things, these experiments that she's done, the things that she's accomplished are amazing. And that is the core of this. No pesticides of any kind, no herbicides, no sides. It's all organic or better, everything. And she talks about organic certification along the way as well. So we recorded the entire week. And basically when we recorded it, we got several different cameras and they were all doing HD. And we also had several microphones and things like that. So there's this editing process of gluing all those pieces together to make a really nice video for the entire week. That's what we're selling. And as much as it's over $1,000 to attend the class in person, we're selling all of it for $80. The fully edited video, $80. There, that's the Kickstarter.
That's the Kickstarter. Why do I need it, Paul? Why do I need it?
Are you just that shocked? The video gets stuck?
No, did not get stuck. Oh, are we? Well,
Paul?
John, say something clever.
I hear him.
Yeah.
I would say that you need it because it's duplicatable. It is something you can duplicate by taking that information that is presented in a manner that any one of us can put it into motion.
Right. Exactly. And guys, before this, Paul was having a little bit of computer trouble, so he may not be hearing us at this time. And I told him to just re-log in if that happens. So Josh says, if it's like the PDC, it's going to be awesome. I know. So Paul Wheaton has a history of doing Kickstarters for his videos and then producing a product. And this year he released a PDC that I think was $47 or $57. It wasn't very much. And you got just many hundreds of hours of PDC that you could take virtually, which I thought was pretty darn cool. So I think he is not hearing us, John. Yep, that is true.
Yeah.
Anyway, are you back, Paul?
All right.
Well, while we're waiting for him,
I'm doing my best to try and close some windows because something's gone wrong and I can't understand what you guys are saying.
Okay, cool. If you have 90 windows open on StreamYard, sometimes this happens. So Tiger Paw, you asked this question, which is totally off topic, but I'll take it now since we're waiting for Paul to catch up with us. Does your water project have anything to do with the clip I sent you? I don't remember what clip you sent me. The reason I'm doing so, for those of you who don't know, I'm rerouting all my water lines to my house right now. And that is because I had Sean Mills from Hack My Solar out years ago to do a big picture plan of how I can sort of peel. I don't plan to go totally off grid, but be less reliant on the grid. And one way that I am very vulnerable is that my water pumps from the bottom of a hill. It's actually, I said 200 feet in my video yesterday. It's actually about 88 feet elevation rise to my house. And in order for that to happen, I have to have a pretty good pump and electricity. When power goes out, I don't have water unless I run a generator. And one of the things Sean said is you can use less power by using a solar powered pump at your pump house and slowly filling a tank above your house and store it there instead of at the bottom of the hill, rather than running it the way it is now. And that was 5 years ago. And this, at the end of this month, I have a food forest installation class where right where we would reroute water lines is right where the food forest goes. So I decided I would run the water lines for that, because what I'm doing is putting a storage tank above my house in elevation and then tying it in. I will not put the solar pump in yet, but that gives me one step of some resilience, where if the power goes out, I have gravity fed water that's not high enough pressure to take a shower, but I can wash my hands and flush toilets without the generator on. And so that whole thing has started today. My neighbor came over with a drone because the ditches are all open with the pipes in them right now. And he took drone footage so that someday in the future, when I sell my house, I can be like, here's where the water lines are. Because I do wish, I have no idea where my water lines are, my actual water lines. I know they get from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill. That's all I know. And every so often we hit one because it's not where we think it should be. So anyway, that's the project.
Well, is that tank going up the hill and it's going to be on ground, or are we putting it on legs, or what's that tank look like?
It will be on ground above my house, above the elevation of my house. If I put it on a water tower, I could have enough pressure from water drop to have higher pressure, but I decided not to have. I don't really want to visually to have a water tower. That's just me.
So how will you fill, until that solar pump is in, how will you fill that water tank?
The existing water pump will be used. So right now, and I don't know how the cutoff is working for that, but it'll fill the tank and then feed to the house.
Cool. How many gallons is that new tank going to be?
That's a great question. Right now, it's going to be an IBC tote, so not very many. And I'm looking for like a 3,500 gallon tank. That's sort of awesome. But I haven't. It's not in the budget yet. What was in the budget was I'm putting 4 water lines in, so 2 for that tank, 1 that we're using, 1 as backup, and then because of where my spring is, I can run an open system geothermal. So I'm running the PEX for geothermal heating and cooling too, which I hope to hook up next year, but we'll see. Because that's
there's a water tank company, and I have seen them sponsor different YouTube channels. So we'll talk about that, and I'll get you that information.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I was just going to tie in an IBC to begin with and get it done. Paul, everybody got to hear all about my water system project that we're working on while you were missing. Can you hear us now? No? He's still a little squiggly. Buffering. Yeah, it's buffering with the internet, I think.
Man, we're running the Starlink, and we got the RV version. So from time of order, we received it in 2 days.
Yeah.
It's taking care of all the issues we've had here.
Tactical says he dug up the whole property. He still can't find my water line.
Twice, and broke 17 fingers.
He broke 0 fingers this time.
Because they're all broken still.
They're all broken now. No, we are using PEX A, which you stretch to do the fittings instead of have a crimp fitting. And what I learned is there's a manual tool to stretch it, and there's an electric tool. And what I learned is that manual tools for stretching PEX A make rednecks very grumpy, and they say lots of colorful words. So we now have an electric tool that we're putting into the Tennessee GSD tool. We have a tool library. We have a list of weird tools that different people have, so that not everybody has to buy one. Wheaton, can you hear us? No. Okay.
What's that tool cost?
It was $419.
Worth every penny.
Yep. Well, I watched him do one fitting and realized it was going to be 2 days of him doing fittings just to do about eight connections. And I, did the math in my head.
He had the idea to use PEX fittings to repair garden hoses.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a lot of repairs. Paul, just, talk if you can start hearing us at some point. So I don't know. This might just be a live stream with John Willis and Nicole Sauce for the rest of the time if Paul's internet continues being... It's like the NSA doesn't want people to know about gardening without ChemAg.
Blink your eyes, Paul. Are you in duress?
Are you in duress? He's just smiling.
I can see you guys.
Oh, we hear
I
you.
hear that you're making sounds. I can't make out anything anybody is saying. I think that my computer is utterly overwhelmed, and because I'm looking at the CPU stuff, and I think if this Kickstarter does well, I should probably get a new laptop.
Maybe so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay?
so we can hear you great. If Margot can hear me and can connect with you, you could try connecting to this with your phone. So that's we could get off the computer and onto the phone. It'll just be different audio.
Somebody type into notes that we can hear him very well. Let him know that.
All right.
Yeah,
Hold
I'm
up
doing it.
signs.
I'm going to say
How
smartphone.
about this? Is there a phone number I can call into?
There is not, but you can use the link on your browser on your phone. That's the one thing about StreamYard, guys, is there's no Zoom number. Anyway. I can hear the echo on his. It's like totally robotic. So anyway, that's the water project.
All right. You guys can hear me just fine. I'm looking at the comments right there. If you guys could type a question in the comments, I can read the comments, and then I will just blather on and on about whatever. Does that sound all right? It's not great, but it'll get us by until apparently I need to replace my computer.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, how does Kickstarter relate to permaculture? Hopefully he sees that. How does Kickstarter relate to permaculture?
How does Kickstarter relate to permaculture? Okay. I kind of feel like, it's a community thing. And I believe that in the world of permaculture, I mean, there's so many different things. There's all the horticultural endeavors. There's the greening the desert. There's natural building, alternative energy. There's all these things. And yet 90% of the work to be done or that has been done, or 90% of the challenges is in community. And so I kind of feel like when you use the word permaculture, 90% of it is community. And so, I mean, the first two ethics of permaculture is care of people and care of the earth. And so it's like, I kind of feel like, care of the people, that just stinks of community. And I kind of feel like Kickstarter is a community thing. I feel like it does a lot for our community. I feel like we talked earlier in the show about some people who behave poorly. And I kind of feel like a lot of the really lovely people that have lovely things to say, they tend to be humble and quiet for the most part, especially in crowds. But when you've got one person saying unkind things, and then you've got 2,000 people putting money up for a Kickstarter, I think that kind of sends a different message. Plus, I kind of feel like, why isn't permaculture a household word? And I kind of feel like a big part of the reason why permaculture is not a household word is these unkind people within the permaculture community. And so somebody will stand up and say, look, I made a hugelkultur bed. Here's what I planted. I think it's beautiful. I'm really enjoying it. Permaculture is awesome. And then an unkind person will come down and say unkind things. That person will be discouraged from ever talking about permaculture again, which is why at Permies, I think why Permies.com has such a massive community. We have 1.8 million people per month and 25 million page views per month. And I believe over 300,000 registered accounts at Permies.com. I think a big part of it is that when those unkind people show up and start to say unkind things, we remove the unkindness and we remove them. And so what's left are the people that are being kind. So community, I kind of feel like, how do we solve a lot of the world's problems? And a lot of it is like, I'm using Kickstarter in order to fund projects, to do experiments, to subsidize events and get things to generally work out, both online and in person at my property. And at the same time, there's a lot of other people who are trying to find a way to live rurally. And they live far away from the city, and they're trying to figure out a way to get it to work. And Kickstarter is also a tool for them. I think the people that say unkind things, they're kind of like, how dare you make money with permaculture? You have to take a vow of poverty like I have. And a lot of times their vow of poverty is also a vow of not doing anything. I kind of feel like, at least with Kickstarter, you're sharing a thing that you've made. And so this is my 12th Kickstarter, and each Kickstarter is something that has been created and made, under the permaculture umbrella. So I kind of feel like it helps projects exist and go on, not only the direct, but the indirect. And I also think that it's helping to convey information. I hope that for every Kickstarter we've done, that the information that people ended up with who backed the Kickstarter, I hope every person found it to be wonderful and really augment their enjoyment of permaculture. I hope that I would love to get some validation of that in the comments here.
Yep.
So I'm going to shut up now.
Is the timing of the gardening project related to the times we are in? Hopefully you see that.
So the timing of the projects, times are tough. At the same time, I think times have always been tough. And it's like, and it was, I remember suffering in high school through the book, A Tale of Two Cities. And here it is much later. And I took the first paragraph, and that's in my book, Building a Better World in Your Backyard Instead of Being Angry at Bad Guys. It's the very first thing I share in the book. And it starts off with it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And so and that was written in 1863, I believe. And it's kind of like, that was true then. And I think it's true now. It's everything is way worse, and simultaneously everything is way better. I mean, look at us. We're having a conversation across thousands of miles and sharing it with people all over the globe. That's kind of cool. I mean, granted, we're having some technical difficulties, but it's the worst. I think there's also a lot to be said for a certain kind of intellect, like when it's 30 below outside, and I've only been outside when it's been 30 below twice, but when it's 30 below outside, and you go outside and you work for a couple of hours and then you come back in, I think that alone, that simple act, is a testament to human intellect. Because I think for every person who can do that, there are 20 who cannot. That they will go outside and then they've got to come right back inside or they'll die. And it's like layers, good boots, good gloves, a hat, don't leave your head exposed at 30 below. A scarf that goes over your face might be good. I mean, there are these simple things. And yet, there's going to be somebody who's pointing at somebody outside at 30 below saying you're doing it all wrong, and they've never been outside at 30 below.
Typical.
I think for all of our community, there is a reward for having a little intelligence about what we're doing. I mean, I don't like, I used to get this thing in the old days called a newspaper, and we didn't have bloggers or any of that, you know, the twits, the whatever's, the Facebooky things or whatever it was. You have to read the newspaper to find out what's going on. And it was depressing. It was gut-wrenching and awful. And it's like, well, I don't want it. I want it to be lovely. I don't want it to be gut-wrenching and awful. But when you do what we do, what the three of us do, and everybody who's on this call, we have gardens. We live out of the city. We have a humble home. We do things in such a way that all of that stuff that was gut-wrenching in that newspaper becomes very small and far away. It is not poisoning our days nearly as much as it used to. Because when you don't have a garden and you live in the city, you better be really paying attention about who you vote for, because that person can kill you. They can say, oh yeah, I made some decisions and now y'all are going to starve. Huh, that sucks. And it's like, but when you've got your own garden and you're living away from that guy, then it doesn't really matter what, if he makes a bad decision, it doesn't really affect us very much. So we don't have to pay as close of attention.
Yeah, that is right on.
You're saying it's about the timing, you know, it's the times that we're in and then the timing of what's being presented. And I agree. And at the same time, I'm going to say it's always going to be this way, and we're going to constantly make it better, and we're also going to make it worse.
Yeah. So you've spent a lot of your focus on optimizing natural building. Can you talk about that?
I believe I heard you say something about natural building. And so I live in the Rocky Mountains. Okay, there's a thumbs up. Okay, I live in the Rocky Mountains, and I have way too many trees. And I have sloped land. And it turns out that when I go digging around in the dirt on my property, I have several different kinds of clay, and I have several different kinds of sand. And so I tend to make things out of logs and branches and wood and clay and sand. And so I don't know, have either of you seen the new greenhouse movie that I put out? It was a Kickstarter a few years ago. The way that we did the Kickstarter was really new to me, and it worked great. But the thing is that we basically made this truly passive greenhouse, which is different than all those people saying that they're making a passive greenhouse and they show you their giant, 12 amp fan that, blows air around and it keeps it, mitigates the temperatures. Ours has no fan. It's all truly passive. And we did a lot of roundwood timber framing. This is what is my passion. I gave a presentation like 2 weeks ago, and they wanted me to present on this new greenhouse that we made with the roundwood timber framing. And so I don't know, there's about 60 people there. And I said, okay, who's keen on roundwood timber framing? And there wasn't a one. And the neat thing is that in that particular community, they had this giant building that's like an icon of their community that is roundwood timber framing. And I went and I looked at it and I wanted to talk about what I saw there. And it's like, yeah, we don't care about that. We want to talk about the truly passive part. So, yes, I'm a firm believer in natural building. I love natural building. I love roundwood timber framing. We have a workshop going on here right now. And a bunch of people are building rocket mass heaters. And so not purely natural building, but there's a lot of natural building to it. And And I know your question wasn't about rocket mass heaters, but it's kind of like where I end up a lot of times whenever I talk about anything. And it's like, I wish to stand firmly, heat your home with 1/10 the wood. And then now in Tennessee, it gets cold, right? How cold does it get in Tennessee?
We get below freezing. It can get to 0. It does not, it stays, teens to mid 30s for about 6 weeks in the winter. I have a rocket mass heater in my pump house because I need to keep my pipes from freezing. And I would put one in my house.
Okay.
If I didn't already have the soapstone stove in here.
And a rocket mass heater would be good,
Right.
I think, in the
Right.
row house
Right.
even.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a statement that your soapstone wood stove is better than a conventional wood stove. You're probably
Yeah.
heating with much less wood. And I'm going to make a claim. And I'm going to say, I suspect that I could build a rocket mass heater that would heat your home with 1/5 the wood of your soapstone wood stove. That's a guess. But I'd be willing to stand by it.
When can you be here to
the
do
key
that?
is-
Yeah, when are we doing that class, Paul?
When can you be here to install those for us?
I cannot understand what you guys are saying.
Oh, bummer.
I'm so sorry. I think this is my computer is sad at running this here. But I do want to go on to say that there's a lot of people who they go to the wood stove store, and there's wood stoves there that say it's 75% efficient. And when I say I can heat a home with 1/10 the wood compared to that stove, then they're saying that I'm saying I'm going to violate the laws of physics. And actually, what's really going to happen is that I'm going to point out all the lies in that label on that stove. Because if you take a 75% efficient wood stove and operate it at 3% efficiency, it's pretty easy to heat a home with 1/10 the wood. And so it's not about the laws of physics. It's about all of the wackadoodle going on in that label. And I don't think that there's evil in the label. It's like they're doing the best they can with the label. And at least there's a standard that has to be met for that label. The wackadoodle, where the wackadoodle really is in somebody looking at that label and saying that's absolute truth. And it's like, it is not. There's like a lot of interesting stuff in that label. And it's going to take 20 minutes to unpack all the things in that label. But really the simplest version is that you can have a 75% efficient wood stove. You probably will never operate it at more than 40 or 50% efficiency. And then you're going to send 80 to 85% of the heat out through the roof. Again, easy to do better than that. All right, I see a finger. Okay, I'm going to turn and I'm going to look at the notes. What do you want me to read? Could you address portable rocket mass heaters for people freezing in Europe? That is an excellent question. So first of all, if you go out right now and you Google wood heat, I think we're somewhere on the first page of Google. So if you Google wood heat, you'll find yourself. It's at richsoil.com. And that's our 8-movie set. And I believe it's movie number 7 that is all about shippable cores. Okay? But again, I did say 8-movie set. And the movie Free Heat just was released yesterday. And that's over there at permies.com. And so we probably don't have all kinds of links going to it and stuff like that. But, if if you look for the free heat movie out at permies.com, I'm sure you'll find it. We just came out with that, and that's got all new information to augment all the previous stuff. Okay, let's talk about those people so very, very cold out in Europe, or they're about to be. And it's like we have been trying to address that for several weeks now, and we're hitting all kinds of bumps. And of course, you know, most everybody says, contact this famous person and have them tell them. Because of course, when they're talking about what to do to be warm, rocket mass heaters aren't even in the conversation. So I mentioned before about how our Kickstarters give us operating capital to do all kinds of things. And so one of the things we're doing during the workshop that's happening this week is we're doing a simple build in a small red cabin. And there's, of course, constantly this desire here to do new experiments because we've built so many rocket mass heaters. We want to, you know, push things even further. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a very simple, tried and true build as one of the 3 builds that's going on this week. And people are going to have their cameras out and try to video all the different little pieces of the build. And then we're going to send it off to get edited into, you know, a nice little 7 or 8 minute long thing and put up on YouTube for free in the hopes that the people in Europe will have access to it. Now, I've already got like 50 videos up on YouTube for free, and that are being, most of which are being absolutely ignored, and that's fine. You know, it's like, that's the way it's going to be. But a few weeks ago when we were talking about like, what can we do to get rocket mass heaters into 100 million brains so that those people won't be cold? And it's like, well, we don't have the ability to contact famous people. We don't have the ability to reach out to 100 million people. There's all these things that we can't do that would obviously solve the problem in a heartbeat. But what I can do, and which I did, is I have a mailing list of more than 100,000 people. And so I emailed all of them and said, we're trying to figure it out. Everybody, A, give us your ideas, and B, here's a link to my 2-minute long video about what is a rocket mass heater. Here's a link to my 3-minute video about how is it that they're so efficient. And here's a link to another 3-minute video that's all about how they are so clean. It's a demonstration of how clean they are to operate and how efficient. So here's these 3 YouTube videos. Please pass these along to anybody and everybody you can think of. I don't think it got passed on very much. And, but okay, so we could do that, try to get the word out. I sent it to 100,000. Maybe it'll go farther. It probably did, but not as farther as we need. And that's okay. That's we did what we could. The next thing is like we could make a YouTube video that shows how to build a very simple and basic rocket mass heater. This one, we think the price tag is going to come out at about $200. It'll probably end up taking us 2 days to build it. And so we'll have a video of doing that and we'll share it. Maybe it'll get 100 million views. It probably will get 2,000. I don't know. We'll see how far it gets, but we'll have tried. We'll have tried by doing things we are able to do to the best of our ability. And so, all right, you asked about natural building, and I ended up talking about rocket mass heaters. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place like this all the time. I mean, so Nicole, you spent some time with me in Texas.
Wheaton.
You know exactly what's going on.
Yeah. No,
So-
we know you're. Yeah. So the rocket mass heaters, guys, hopefully Paul will know that I'm talking right now. I have one. And until I saw one burn, I never understood how absolutely clean it is. Because you see smoke coming out of the chimney and you realize it's water, it's steam coming out. And that was the day that I finally understood, like, not only is the radiant heat from the mass that gets heated up fantastic and you're using so much less wood, but the pollution impact is so much lower. And I got very excited about them and a little sad that I have this wonderful soapstone stove. And I've always thought that day when I remodel this house, there will be a rocket mass heater for the house heating here long term. But so, yeah, natural building going into rocket mass heaters makes 100% sense to me, Paul. So, okay. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Okay. And this one is, you can read it too. It says, has anyone here integrated Trombe windows or walls into their homes? And I had to look up what that is, but it looks like a south-facing area with air pockets that help heat your house passively. Have you played with any of that?
All right. Is this one about, has anyone here integrated Trom windows or walls into their homes?
I said Trombe.
Is that the one?
Yes.
I've always pronounced it Trom. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've heard it that way a bunch of times too. So we have Trom walls, Trom windows. I've always heard them referred to as Trom walls and not Trom windows, but they do always have a glass component. We use them in our willow feeders. But I have not attempted to do anything with Trom stuff in a home. And I do along the lines, because basically the idea is that sunlight's going to go through glass and then hit a mass. And this is what we're currently doing in the truly passive greenhouse, but not with a Trom wall. Trom is usually like there's an inch gap between the glass and the mass. And I'm going to go back to saying we do this on our willow feeders. And so the idea is that in the willow feeders, it's a place where you go to poop. It's not a composting toilet. It's not an outhouse. But a person going in it might think, no, I use this in a very similar fashion to the way I use a composting toilet or an outhouse. But the thing is that there's like where you sit is a big sealed box. And there is an odor inside that box that you would rather have elsewhere. So the idea is, and I think the thought challenge is, so like when you have a conventional bathroom and Uncle Ralph goes into that bathroom and punishes it thoroughly, and then Uncle Ralph steps out and you need to use the bathroom, that's a moment where oftentimes you might change your mind. I can wait 20 minutes. And so what happened there? I mean, why is it that in 2022, we can't just go right in? I mean, it's not that difficult. So inside the willow feeder, then what we want to do is where Uncle Ralph has visited the willow feeder, you can go right in right after Uncle Ralph and you don't smell a thing. This is part of the magnificent willow feeder technology. And so there is a big can inside that box. And what we want to do is to pull the air out of that box just enough so that the air pressure inside the box is lower than the air pressure in the room where your nose is. And so that way, any of the odors that you don't care for are going away from your nose. And so no one suffers. We use a Trom wall in order to be able to kind of heat up a tube, which is connected to that box. And then as there's a thermosiphon created, it pulls air from the box out the roof, which is kind of what we do a lot with rocket mass heaters and all kinds of other things that we're working with for passive air movement. And so what happens is that the air in the willow feeder room gets pulled through the toilet seat into the box, and then through the trom wall and out the roof. That's our trom wall experience. We're not using it to heat. We're using it to make your nose happy.
That's awesome.
Did I answer the
Paul,
question well enough? I mean,
yes.
I kind of avoided the question.
You said I didn't do it, but then you explained what you would use it for. My house is actually built with the intention, I didn't know this when I bought it, to have a greenhouse on the south side and this 12-inch stone wall right here. You know what that's for? Is to radiate the heat in. I didn't know it when I bought the house because it was just a bunch of broken glass. And so I get a little bit of that now because I've built something with a clear roof that so in like at this time of year, I use my wood stove a little bit, but it's more if the sun hits it, I don't really need to. And it is amazing what you can capture with a mass and something hitting it, you know, from the outside, just the sun.
I can tell that Nicole is talking. I can't make out what she's saying.
Okay.
Maybe somebody will type something up in the little chatty
It's
thing,
okay.
and then I'll know.
I'm going to ask you if there's anything you want to say before you sign off, because I know you only had an hour and we're at an hour. So we'll see if you can see that.
Oh, anything you want to say before you sign off? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, please back my Kickstarter. At least go look at it. I think my community has done a wonderful job of putting together a beautiful Kickstarter, and I think it's a beautiful product for crazy cheap. And so I hope, I mean, we sure put a lot of work into getting it to this point, and I sure hope that people will at least take a look. Oh, right, there's early bird goodies, and so this is stuff provided by people who love us, and they just added their candy in there. I know that Nicole, I think in a previous early bird we had your cookbook, and I think, don't we have something in this one from you as well? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I have a fermentation guide in there for you.
Right, the fermentation stuff. And so look through the early bird goodies. It goes out to everybody who supports the Kickstarter in the first few days. And I think that $80 for 35 hours of video that is this rich is, I don't know, a really amazing deal. We sell the tickets to the course itself for about $1,000. I think you can get tickets right now for a little more, and so what a deal to get it for just $80. I feel like all the stuff we do, the price is not just sweet, but extra sweet. Whereas I feel like a lot of other Kickstarters, I'm kind of like, why would anybody pay that much when you can get it brand new for less than that right now elsewhere? And not only do I think that the price is good, but I also think that it's like, I don't know of even Master Gardener programs having video of them, let alone the idea of, because there is a lot of stuff that's conveyed in a great Master Gardener course, but it's kind of like, okay, all of that without all the toxic gick and a bunch of Fukuoka stuff and other food-based gardening things added in, I think it just knocks it out of the park. I think it's just a huge deal. So that's my last thing, I guess, to say. I'm happy to touch on something else if you want. I'm looking at the chat thing. There's something highlighted there, but it wants me to know that it's chat, so it's got that over it. What if I click on chat? What does it do? I don't know. Oh, there. It says backed. Support your favorite YouTubers. And that, what is up with that? Go away. It's hiding it. It's like, here,
all the pop-ups.
by bringing up a little window to put over
So
that.
the next Kickstarter is a repair job on Paul Wheaton's computer.
Is the course good for people even in very short growing seasons? So I live in Missoula, Montana. That might answer your question. I would say yes. Now here in Montana, there are certain places where people have gardens, and when we talk about, well, I have a 90-day growing season, or I have a 120-day growing season. There are people where the answer to that question is, I don't know how many days I get this growing season. I might get 30, I might get 60. And we just don't know until we start growing things. Because it's like, surprise, it's July. Here's some snow. And so, yeah, I think we're very used to those very short growing seasons here. And Helen's grown in all of them. And so I think that's the primary focus. I don't think Helen's ever done tropical or subtropical, which is a whole different way of doing everything. So this is all for places that freeze. So most of her life has been in Montana. Fukuoka is subtropical though. That's so there's that. But I know that she did like northern inland California for several years. Now she's in Eastern Oregon, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Hell's Canyon. So I mean, like right up against the Idaho border. And then she did that year-long stint of the 2,000-acre organic farm in Colorado. So all of these places are quite cold. And that's so. And I sat in on this Garden Master course. And I can tell you everything in there was cold climate. There was really nothing about tropical or subtropical.
Yep.
So
I
would say cold climate.
Yeah. It sounds like cold climates.
Cold climate is all I do. I've been in the Seattle area, and I've had people offer me land. Which kind of goes more into the skip book, but I didn't want it. I mean, if you try to have an apple tree in the area, then it gets covered in lichens, and the apples just don't do well. There's a lot of funguses and insects there, whereas here in Montana, the apple trees are always beautiful. They aren't covered in lichens. And we don't have like as much of the insect trouble that they have. It's a little easier. And here you can build soil, whereas in the Seattle area, it is difficult to build soil because the microbes that live in the soil work year round, and they kind of eat away your organic matter faster. So it's easier to build soil here in Montana. And we're big sky country, so we have more sunshine than anybody else, apparently. There was actually a study done, and it was scientifically proven that when you're in Montana, there is a phenomenon where the sky seems bigger. And apparently there is a scientific explanation on why, when you're in Montana, the sky does seem bigger, because that's why they call it big sky country. And it's a bizarre phenomenon, and it does seem bigger.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on today, Paul. I appreciate you making time on what I know is a hugely busy day for you. Let's talk about getting you on again when we can work out the computer problem so that we can talk back and forth. And guys, definitely check out his Kickstarter. It's the Beyond Organic Garden Master Course. I put the links in the comments, or if you look at the show notes, it's in the description of the video. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. All right. So that was great to hear from Paul Wheaton. I'm sorry about the technical glitches. It is a testament to somebody's poise when they can walk into a situation like this and gracefully transition the way he did and come up with a solution. And that's something like, I wasn't worried about Paul when I saw the technical glitches coming because I knew he would figure it out. Not everybody, sometimes that throws people off their game. So I was pretty impressed with that. I don't know about you, John.
So, yeah, I assume he had somebody sitting there probably with a phone so he could kill his feed and then listen to the audio on the other. So I just looked up the website where he was talking about the rocket mass heater. Now, I've always seen rocket mass heaters as a big concrete or, clay project that's tucked in the corner of a mud hut or something, right?
Yeah.
A permanent fixed feature. But the one I just saw with Paul Wheaton looks like a 55-gallon drum, smaller, and it looks like it's made of stainless or titanium or something, which would probably have a much smaller footprint. And maybe that is something that you could actually buy and install and not have to fabricate yourself. Now, my suspicion is the Department of Making You Sad, the government, has such regulation on those that you can't just buy one, and they don't want you using them for whatever reason.
I don't know. The one I have in my pump house is small and it's ugly because it's in my pump house. And so my mass is gravel, but it's a 55-gallon drum and pipe running through that. I think they do make so they're called masonry stoves too, sort of the off-the-shelf thing. It does the same sort of efficient burning and putting the exhaust through a long mass to heat it up and keep radiating. And I think there is now commercially a rocket mass heater that you can just install. So that is how that world has changed since it started happening. I know if I do one here, it will have an integrated bench for reading just because it's cozy. But I think part of why they get purpose built is based on the space you're putting it in. There's lots of choices you can make about how that mass looks. And that's part of the fun of the rocket mass heater.
Cool.
On the other hand, like you, it'd be great to just buy one and throw it in.
Because I won't ever build it. But if I had a site where I could just go and have 3 show up on a semi truck, then we would have them and be using them.
Yeah. Or you need to do a rocket mass heater workshop.
Right, but that means I have to build a rocket mass heater.
Or somebody else does, yeah.
Yeah.
No, we need Paul Wheaton teaching that class, so you don't have to build it.
Correct. I have I got this year, we got a barrel stove.
Yeah.
A double barrel stove, but it has a sheet metal box all around it. So all you see is a box with a door, and you put your wood in there. And then it's all filled up. We can fill it up with gravel, sand, diatomaceous earth, whatever. So it'll work as a thermal sink. And we're actually going to use that in the row house this winter.
Yeah. Here's a big question for you, John. Do you have time to read?
So I do not read. When I read, I am asleep within 5 minutes. I listen to audiobooks all the time, or even YouTube videos. It's very rare that I have eyes on a YouTube video. I'm almost always listening to a YouTube video or content of some kind, though. Yeah.
This was my favorite question I wanted to bring up, but then we had the audio glitches. Are you sure the chat won't explode with both Paul and John? It would have. If he hadn't had technical glitches, I'm pretty sure the chat would have eventually there would have been a shift in the force at some point with both of y'all's energy. Guys, this is a conversation, so give us conversation. The other question I have here, it says, Nicole, did you see Verge Permaculture's rocket mass heater bench in their greenhouse? I did not, but I just don't have to be convinced about rocket mass heaters after having one here. I know we made some mistakes on mine, and so it's being rebuilt. I had a mortar failure that I would have asked Paul about had we had audio. I think the issue with my mortar is where I have it is up to 100% humidity and super hot in the summer, and then super dry in the winter. And that change over time has caused the mortar to crack. And so I don't know if we mixed it wrong or I need to do a different kind of mortar for that situation. And that's something I'm going to get to the bottom of. And then we're going to re-put that stack together with a different solution. But I never doubted the efficacy of the rocket mass heater. It's just, having gone from a conventional wood stove to the soapstone, I use 25% of the wood that I did before, just from that one change. So, spending $4,000 on that stove was worth it from a wood use standpoint. But the rocket mass heater just uses twigs. It's hard to explain for somebody who hasn't seen it. You're getting a super hot fire. You're capturing all of the heat. You're burning dry small pieces of wood, so not even logs. And that means you can collect windfall in the forest, dry it, burn it, and heat with that, which is pretty darn cool.
There's some pretty efficient camp stoves too. I saw Lot's project actually had one in their trailer. It's literally like a 12 by 12 inch firebox. And the ones I've seen run on just 5-inch block. They have these little blocks you put in there, but you can cut super small stuff, and those things burn for hours and hours, just on little tiny pieces. As far as your concrete, your mortar, there's thousands of kinds of concrete. You just need to talk to a guy at the concrete place, and tell them and have the solution. So with the rocket mass heaters being so efficient and steam coming out the pipe, when all the zombies are out, everybody's going to run to the woods and hunt deer, and they see your chimney. It's like a beacon, right? They're going to come thinking there's food and heat there. Would that not be the case with a rocket mass heater? If it burns so efficient, we probably shouldn't smell it as much, and we shouldn't see smoke, right?
Yeah, unless you're close. Depending on the placement of your chimney, you do see steam coming out the chimney if you look at the chimney, but it's not flowing up into the sky. Mine would come out and just sort of dissipate on it's just kind of like it sticks out about 12 to 18 inches and then it's gone. And I got icicles during really cold weather. So I had icicles hanging off that I would knock off from time to time. My chimney also came out sideways instead of straight up on that. And so I think it is something you're not really smelling it. And when you first start the fire, there's some smoke. Once the fire is efficient, there is not smoke. So there is a time where when you're first starting the fire where you do have some exhaust, but you could, if you were trying to be stealthy, you could do that at night. Somebody will smell it, but they won't see it. And smell doesn't always get you where you need to go, right? From a location standpoint. Do you guys only eat your own meat? And if so, do you feel a difference?
No.
No.
I feel all kinds of differences with the help of chemicals. We actually eat very little of our own meat. We are really, really good at making meat. I'm really good at raising animals. I am not the best at turning animals into, our freezers are completely full. It's very rare that we eat any of that meat. To the point right now, I still have 40 Cornish crosses out there that are literally this big. I mean, they're the size of they're bigger than my turkeys.
We should have done a class during SRF and just had everybody kill one. And
they're laying eggs. The females are already laying eggs. I haven't had any broken legs. I haven't had any heart attacks. I'm literally just kind of like I have Cornish cross birds right now bigger than my puppy is. And that's a big puppy. So I'm just kind of letting them go to see what'll happen. And if we have them expire, we'll just, use them as dog food. I have a guy here that cooks 3 times a week, and then Amanda cooks, and both of them shop for at butchers and stuff for unfrozen meat. So the real truth is I don't know where the meat really comes from. And we had beef ribs today that, were enormous. It's like eating a dinosaur rib. So no, my Nicole eats a lot more of the meat she produces than we do, for sure.
Yeah. So we just this morning delivered 5 sheep to a butcher. That's what I was doing this morning. I decided not to process them myself because time.
Were you sad?
I wasn't. I don't know how tactical's closer to the sheep. And actually one of them's kind of an asshole. So there was this, I said, I'm going to miss this one, but I'm not going to miss this one because he kept trying to take us off our feet, and it's dangerous to have that in the flock. I didn't want that genetic tendency passed on, but I kind of had to say goodbye to them this morning. And then, two of them were dispatched before we even left. So, part of there's two things. For me, it is hard to shoot the animals I've raised, except for the chickens. Like I can make myself do it, but I usually get a friend to come over and shoot them for me before I process them. That's how I manage that emotional piece. Tactical has a tendency to be gone for butchering day here when we're processing on site because he's so much closer to the animals all the time. And so that's sort of our deal. But it was just, I wish we would have been able to get video of loading the sheep, but it was dark. And it actually wasn't as much of a debacle as you would think. Yesterday we had the livestock trailer there and they went in, no problem. And so we left them sort of penned around the trailer, but ready to go. And then this morning they were like, nope, it's dark in there. I'm not going in there. So we had to herd them in a little bit and they tried to make a break for it, but we got them in, we got them to the butcher. I can say this. I was talking to Paul Wheaton before John got on this, before we went live. And one of the hardest things for me when I'm traveling and speaking is that I'm no longer eating the food that I eat here. And because I've gotten pretty clean in my food sources, I have tummy distress when I travel. So I do mostly eat meats we've either raised here or I source locally. So I have a cow that we get every year that I source locally. We're eating chickens from here. We're eating turkeys from here, from a nearby farm. And the lamb is now going to be like, we're selling 3 of these 5 sheep. We're keeping 2 for us and we will eat those. And then venison from hunting. That's what we mostly eat here. And when I go off of that, I just get tummy ache. It's nothing terrible. It's not the end of the world. I feel a little punky. And I think it depends on the quality of what I get my hands on too. I think some of it is just age of the meat at the store by the time you get it. It's just older. Mine has gone, it's been butchered, it's rested in the fridge, and then it's gone into the freezer, and then it comes out and I cook it. I don't let it sit around and defrost and freeze and defrost and freeze. So I notice a huge difference in how I feel. And same with commercial dairy. Like I started making cheese and I still eat commercial cheese because it's delicious. But when I went mostly off commercial dairy, same thing, just feel better.
I would think being rid of the sheep for the winter would almost be a relief with as much energy has been put into these things over the last couple months. And with snow and slush coming, man, I could just imagine.
Yeah, that's what I asked. I asked Tactical. I said, are you feeling a little relieved? He's like, I'm mixed, but yes, because now we have 6 to take care of instead of 11. One of those 6 may also get processed in January. We're not sure yet how many males we want to keep. And we probably have babies coming, but they haven't been born yet. So I don't know. The sheep may have terminated when they traveled here from Ohio.
So do you have enough vegetation to feed them to overwinter, or are you going to have to supplement feed them?
I have 42 bales of Timothy hay for the winter.
Got it. So are you going to confine them into what size area are you going to keep them in over the winter?
We will probably still rotate them to keep the parasite load. But if there's an ice storm coming, I'm pretty sure they're going to go to the barn. And then it'll be barn plus the barnyard. And that's, maybe 400 or 500 square feet of pasture off of that they have access to. But really the goal with the sheep is that they aren't for more than 3 days on the same pasture here.
Right. So we're going to have to bring in some round bales, I think. To go through the winter. I mowed the grass out front. Yeah. And it killed it. Right. I cut it to 6 inches, but then it didn't rain. So everything's crispy here right now. So we're going to have to bring in something. And I didn't know sheep couldn't eat clover. I had no idea that clover will make them bloat and mess them all up.
It can.
There's a lot of things that I don't know about sheep, apparently. Yeah. So we're going to have to source something pretty quick here.
Well, and that's and Timothy hay is great for them. And if you start sourcing Timothy hay out now, you may find it But because of all the hay shortage stuff, people bought it up too.
Can it have can it be Timothy hay mixed with other like field grasses?
It can. I think Timothy is better, or Timothy fescue is really popular with sheep. Too much fescue can cause bloat as well, but pretty much any transition from one thing to another. So, very rich pasture to hay can be kind of tricky, but if it's dry, that's less. Hay back to pasture in the spring is where you're looking at the biggest risk period for bloat problems. And then the clover thing, I heard that too. And I have a lot of clover that just grows here. And I watched them eat clover and not get bloat. So I think it depends on how much they actually eat and where their bellies are, like where their biome is for that.
Cool.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean you need to eradicate clover on your property. The other thing I think will happen, or that I'm hoping will happen, is as we're rotating them through, the things that grow back are the things they need, because that's what is supposed to happen when you rotate intensively your ruminants. So
cool.
How is your sheep tractor working?
They're not in there. When we brought 78 or so people past the sheep tractor, the sheep freaked out and knocked off one of the skirts. We had to put skirts on there because they're lambs. They're real small. It works great. We haven't captured them and put them back in. The sheep tractor works wonderful. We did have to put skirts all the way down to the ground, which makes it difficult in tall grass to drag it. So I just take some tubular nylon and attach it to the four-wheeler and just slowly drag it, and it works great. It works perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm tempted by something like, I'm sure Tactical isn't. I'm tempted by something like that for winter, because my worry about winter is the shelter piece, where we have tarps that they can be under to not get wet right now. But when we have side wind and ice and 10 degrees, that's a huge difference from a shelter standpoint and a needing to protect them standpoint. Then it's the middle of summer, it's 80 degrees at night, and there's some wind, and they get a little bit wet. So yeah. Travis says clover quantity dictates bloat. Yeah. And here's the other thing is if they have access to pasture and you're not overgrazing, what I've noticed is they tend not to eat the things that are going to make them sick. They'll eat what works for them.
So our sheep have gone through the flat field out front. That's where they're at most days now. And they've eaten everything down except that stuff that looks like wild hemlock that's got the little white flowers. Yeah. And we actually used the app on that thing the other day. That's not what it is. It is something that's slightly toxic, but it's not the poisonous thing. Yeah. Whatever. But that shit just showed up this year. Like it's never been here before.
Well, you got a nice pioneer plant, probably.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff grows here. That I know what you're talking about. The hemlock that's not hemlock. Yeah. They'll nibble on it a little bit, but ours won't mess with it either. Okay, would you ever consider a compost heater for a greenhouse or animal shed? And if I understand what Justin is referring to here, that's where you have water piped through compost, which is hot, which helps heat your greenhouse. I don't currently have a greenhouse, so I don't have an answer to this. Would you, John, in your hoop house?
We definitely could. I mean, we could also just put down. We have wood mulch that it gets rained on all the time. So if we put that in there, it would be like a steam house inside there. Totally could. We could also south side. Just put IBC totes all the way down the south side of that thing, or 55-gallon drums, and it would, heat that water and then would kind of radiate inward. That would probably give us, I don't know, maybe 5-degree temperature rise. Not opposed to it, but wood seems a whole lot easier. I mean, we can just put a little bit of wood in that heater if we need to. Yeah.
I would consider a rocket mass heater in a greenhouse for sure. I think so. I used to have a greenhouse here and I took it out, and it was just, like standard double wall plastic greenhouse with a frame. And the issue I had with it is it gets cold in the winter, and then it gets cold in the greenhouse, and it takes a whole lot more resource to keep it warm in that greenhouse than just taking the plants in my house. So I reduce the number of plants I overwinter. I take them in the house. I throw them outside when it's sunny, and some of them die. and some of them don't. And eventually I may have a greenhouse again, but if I do, I'm gonna think about how to insulate it more, because in Tennessee, like, you can't, it's not great on the plants to leave them in a unventilated greenhouse through most of our year, because it just gets so hot. But then in the winter, what you're fighting is that at nighttime it's going below freezing, and so are the plants. So really, for me, it's more of a seasonal thing. I'm either going to be using it to cool in the summer by having ventilation and shade in there, or I need to keep it warm, which means it's half underground or something. I don't even know how I'm going to think about insulating that.
I think a lot of people don't take into consideration either the time and effort that it would take to heat that thing through the winter. And what are you growing? Like, what are you going to grow out there during the winter that's actually going to produce a food crop? And will you utilize it? I think it would be great to do it, demonstrate it, so you know what the potential is. I think even more importantly, to know what the potential is not. Like, we have these ideas in our head that we're just going to plant all these things and, you know, grow them up and have all these vegetables during the winter. Maybe. At what cost, at what effort does that really take? You know, would you be better off just drying, dehydrating, and freeze drying a bunch of stuff, you know, in the summer and spring, so that you don't have to put all that effort in there during the winter?
I think one of the funniest conversations I ever had with a Mennonite was at the farmer's market, and they had tomatoes because they had figured out how to circulate water past a wood stove in their greenhouse, and over winter grew tomatoes. And I was very fascinated by how they did it, right? And they're telling me all about how it worked, and the guy ends up, he says, "But we're never doing it again." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because that is a $25 tomato based on all the work they put in and the wood they burned and all of that." And I kind of took that lesson to heart when I started growing vegetables in the winter here. I grow lettuce Kratky style, and it takes, you know, I don't have my system up right now, but it's mostly automated. It takes me half an hour to an hour a week to do that when I have it going. And it's, you know, things that you would eat in salad, like dill or basil or herbs and lettuces. And that grows great in that system. When I'm not growing inside under lights in the winter, I have a little like ornamental pot tomato. So I get like 2 cherry tomatoes a year out of this thing. Other than that, I'm not growing the fruiting things. I'm not growing peppers. I'm not growing tomatoes. I'm not growing cucumbers, because that's just a lot of resource and a lot of time to get that done. That may change. I actually, somebody offered to come give me an architectural plan founded in permaculture for my house to remodel it. And I may take him up on that. I may see if he wants to trade one of my event tickets, because if my house were perfect, and I don't like my house, I just like where I live. It would feel like the inside is outside, but I wouldn't be losing a lot of energy to the outside for that. And then I could have sort of like, I don't know if you call it an arboretum or whatever, like an area where weird plants can grow, like avocado trees, coffee trees, and bananas, but small. But it would be very cool to have, I think, light and plants that can't freeze inside here as just sort of a winter hangout and a summer retreat.
I thought we could just do kind of like a glass greenhouse. I mean, it doesn't have to be glass, but I would prefer glass on the back wall here, where all those 55-gallon water containers are, right? Because we can just run it off, and that catches all the heat from the building, you know, through the evening or whatever. It would just kind of superheat that area. Somebody had asked if that plant I was talking about is yarrow. It's actually late boneset is what the phone app says it is.
Here's a question for you, John. Have you guys ever tried aquaponics or fish farming?
So I believe both of us have. I currently have 1,800 gallons IBC totes. One of them has 6 big koi fish inside it. And we have one little tiny pump that pumps that water uphill to the fish tank. The fish tank overflows into a 55-gallon drum, which is a particle separator. So all the solids settle, and then comes out of pipe into a Y and splits into 3 IBC totes. And once those are filled, those overflow back into the pipes that feed that pump. We do have it. A buddy of mine was growing an 8 salad blend, and we were getting the lettuces literally 4 or 5 hours after harvested. Our chef was making a tri-tip salad a couple times a week, and my buddy stopped growing those lettuces to do hemp, and we went and got lettuces from the grocery store, and it was absolutely terrible, no matter where we bought it or what we bought. So we set up this system. The system works really well for growing lettuces. You can grow other things in there for sure, but it's just much simpler for me to put them in dirt in raised beds that we use, especially having all the rabbit manure that we have. Guys come in and look at my aquaponic system, and I really tell them I'm like Kratky. There's a gentleman here yesterday, came down. He was really asking about that. I said, you can totally do this. It is absolutely doable. Try Kratky the first time, because you can buy your potions, your powders and stuff. For $100, you can have 4 years worth of this stuff to feed, a family of 6. And it's just so simple not to do it. Even if I was going to produce food that way, even with the system I have, I would still use Kratky. I have tons of stuff here to set up as Kratky hydroponics. That's what we bought it for.
Yeah, the thing about Kratky is it's kind of like if you start a garden outside and you go 100% organic, no external inputs, you are cultivating your soil to be the perfect garden, and it's your first year gardening and you've never grown a plant in your life, your fail rate increases in that way. A lot of people will start container gardening first, and they will buy the plants already started by somebody else. They won't start them from seeds, and they might even use a conventional fertilizer and pest control. And the stuff you grow in that way is going to be fresher and better for you than most of what you find at the store that's been shipped all over the country. So what you've learned in that container example is how to raise a plant. And then when you transition into the uber organic gardening, you're learning a second skill. You're learning how to balance nutrient in the soil and a whole bunch of other things, which by all means, if you can start out that way and get that done, it's not impossible. It's just harder. I think the same thing goes with aquaponics versus something like Kratky, where you have a formula you follow. You're learning how to grow plants in water instead of soil. With aquaponics, you're learning to fertilize plants with fish poop. So you got to keep the fish alive. You can't, when fish get disease, you can't just put a bunch of stuff in the water to save them, because that goes in your food. So, you're going to suffer losses there. I see the purpose of an aquaponics system to be vegetable output and not fish output. The fish is a byproduct. My fish that I raise, because I made a sort of a medium decision. I have goldfish. Goldfish are hard to kill, and I have koi. Koi are hard to kill, but I'm not eating them either, right? I'm eating the vegetables off it. My system's different than John's. So I have a bed. I have a 150-gallon sump with fish in it where I could put floating rafts. I usually just have water hyacinth on that. And then I have a fill and flush bed that's lava rock, and that grows greens. And I'll get green onions at the store, and they'll be this big, and I'll put them in there, and they'll double and triple in size, and then I'll use them. So I get more value from when I buy those at the store. I take celery, and I eat the celery and leave the core and put the core in, and then it grows into a celery plant. And I root plants in there. So I'll take a sage herb, for example, and put it in, and it will root, and then I can transplant it elsewhere in the yard. The other 2 beds I have are called wicking beds, which basically it's kind of the best of both worlds, John, where it's like your raised bed thing with the soil, but it's being watered by the aquaponics system, so I don't have to keep up on watering. So that part's automated. The water goes into the bottom of this, fills up an area that's just lava rock, and flows out the other side back into the sump. There's weed cloth and then soil, and then fruiting plants like tomatoes, eggplant, or anything else grows in there. But I will say this, greens grow the best in that system too. I grew eggplants and tomatoes in it, but I get more mileage off my tomatoes in a hydroponic system I have or in my upper garden. So I don't know if it's just like the water is too optimal or what, but the aquaponic system for me is like my old lady plan. I get less young every year. And I suspect, but I don't know, that as I get older, mobility may eventually become something that's harder. And the aquaponics system is very close to my house. I can get to it. I don't have to bend over. And I can grow a lot of food without a lot of effort. Where in the garden that's up the hill, I got to walk up there. I got to get down on the ground. It's harder on mobility. So my long-term plan for me as I age over time is bring it in closer to the house and have things up that I can maintain better. And everything in the permaculture plan here has sort of that balance between young person and old person, because I don't know, I just embraced reality. I am going to get older or I'm just going to die. I'm not sure which, but I'm hoping for the first.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all the questions we have. John, anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
We got a thunderstorm coming in. We're supposed to get some rain here pretty shortly.
Yay!
Which we definitely need. No, just normal everyday stuff. We're just pruning trees right now. I know that once everything freezes and all the leaves are off, it's the best time to prune it. And every year that never happens. So I'm doing tons of pruning right now and just kind of getting these trees. They say that you should be able to take a cat by the tail and throw it through there. And when it spreads out, it shouldn't hit any limbs, right? That's how your peach trees are supposed to be when you prune them. So that's kind of just a little bit of stuff every day. We're still pulling tons of figs off of those 2 big fig trees. Next year, we should have 14 more of them come online. Just kind of getting stuff together, taking some time and putting wood mulch around all the blueberries so we don't have to do it in the spring, and just a little bit, just an hour every day, and it adds up.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Garden 30 I haven't been live streaming, is a little bit every day gets you further. What we're doing here, I'm taking things out. So my tomatoes I have 1 more wall of tomatoes to remove, but we've had our first freeze. It's actually still alive, which is why I haven't taken it out, because it's under Taj Mahal, so I think it didn't quite get affected. And same thing, I have a banana tree that a friend of mine put in the yard this year, and I have a leaf cage around it, and I'm gradually, as the leaves fall out, filling that up under the hopes it will live. We're getting ready for the food forest install here, so I've been acquiring plants as much as I can for that. I've got, mine are not in the ground. I've got like rows of trees and herbs and all sorts of things that are going to go in the ground later this month, getting our beds ready to plant garlic. It's time to plant garlic in Tennessee. I plant mine the last week of October. So we pull the garden bed out that I'm growing things in up there, then put garlic in, and that'll come due in June or so. So it's just a little bit every day really helps. And of course, the big water project has thrown Tactical off of his focus. So he's like, it's so busy. That's because you're digging a ditch, dude.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so it's been pretty good. Yeah, looking forward to the winter when things calm down. Except for it was funny. I talked to you yesterday, and the first thing you said to me was, "Well, I was up at 3:00," and I thought I wasn't.
Yeah, I'm not always. But I was yesterday.
Yeah, it's true. I have learned that from you. When I wake up and it's 4:30 and I just woke up, I just get up. And
because if I don't, even if I slept 3 or 4 more hours, I don't feel as rested. The rest of that entire day, my energy level is so much lower than had I just got up when I actually woke up.
Yeah, that happened to me. I think it was Saturday this weekend, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to work on garden projects because it's 4:30, and by 8:00 I had gotten so much done that.
Yep.
You're not wrong. I should just do that most days.
You're not fighting the heat, and you don't have other distractions either.
Yeah, you get a lot done. All right. Well, great. Anything you want to share before we sign off?
No, I do a live video every night, 9:00 on YouTube. My website is SOE Tactical Gear. We make tactical gear and do t-shirts and lifestyle stuff in addition to tactical gear. Content, you never know what it's going to be, but we put content up every day on YouTube. We're on Rumble, and I'm on almost every social media. The videos I put up on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook are a little different typically than what we put up on the YouTube channel.
Awesome, guys. I'm Nicole Sauce with Living Free in Tennessee. I have an audio podcast that comes out 5 days a week now. That's at livingfreeintennessee.com or on the Fountain app or other apps on your phone. You can download that. Plus, we do also put these live streams out on YouTube and on Odyssey. Definitely hit that like and bell if you want to be included as part of future live streams. We do a live stream with John Willis every Wednesday at 12:30, except for when it's Tuesday with Jack, but you'll know that if you're following us. And definitely check out Paul Wheaton's Beyond Organic Garden Master Course. I think it's a pretty cool little project. I'm actually going to run over there and support it right after this. Have a great day, guys.
See you guys.